The great hall of the Galactic Assembly was beautiful in a cold way. Crystal pillars rose toward a ceiling made of living light. Thousands of seats curved around a central platform where the accused stood alone. Ambassador Daniel Carter looked small against the vast space, but his back was straight and his eyes were steady. 347 species had gathered to decide the fate of Earth. Some were tall and thin like walking trees. Others floated in tanks of strange liquid. A few existed only as patterns of light. They had come from every corner of the galaxy, united by one common purpose: to pass judgment on humanity. The High Chancellor stood at the highest platform. His silver skin caught the light as he raised his four arms for silence. The chamber fell quiet. "The vote is complete," he announced. His voice carried no emotion. "By a margin of 312 to 35, the Galactic Union has decided. Earth and all human territories are hereby banished from Union space. All trade agreements are canceled. All diplomatic ties are cut. The Sol system will be placed under permanent quarantine." Daniel listened to the words echo through the chamber. Around him, alien delegates whispered to each other. Some looked satisfied. Others seemed uncomfortable. A few, the ones who had voted against the decision, looked away in shame. The Chancellor continued reading the list of crimes. Humans were too aggressive. They bred too fast. They adapted too quickly. In just 200 years of interstellar contact, they had spread to 47 worlds. They had risen from a primitive species to a major power. This made the older species nervous. This made them afraid. But the real reason, the one nobody would say out loud, was simpler. Humans were different. They didn't follow the old rules. They asked questions that shouldn't be asked. They challenged traditions that had stood for 10,000 years. They made the comfortable species feel uncomfortable. Daniel waited for the Chancellor to finish. He felt the eyes of the galaxy upon him. They expected him to beg. They expected him to plead for mercy, for more time, for another chance. That was what other banished species had done. They had cried and promised to change and slowly faded into nothing. Daniel smiled. The expression confused the watching aliens. This was not how the script was supposed to go. The human ambassador reached into his pocket and pulled out a small communication device. He pressed a single button and spoke 3 words. "Exodus Protocol confirmed." Then he put the device away and looked up at the Chancellor. "Thank you for your time," he said politely. "We will be leaving now." He turned and walked out of the chamber. He didn't look back. Across the galaxy, things began to happen very quickly. On the trading station of Nexus Prime, human merchants closed their shops. They packed their goods in silence, said goodbye to no one, and boarded their ships. Within 6 hours, every human business on the station was empty. The alien shopkeepers who had worked beside them for decades found only locked doors and dark windows. On the research world of, human scientists wiped their computers clean. Years of shared research vanished in moments. Joint projects that had taken decades to build were erased. When their alien colleagues arrived the next morning, they found laboratories stripped bare and data cores burned to ash. On 100 different worlds, the same scene played out. Human embassies closed their gates. Human workers quit their jobs. Human families packed their belongings into ships and flew toward the quarantine zone. They moved with a speed and coordination that shocked the watching galaxy. The Galactic Union had expected the banishment to take months to enforce. They had prepared ships to escort human vessels out of Union space. They had written protocols for seizing human assets and managing the transition. None of it was needed. By the time the official banishment order was signed and sealed, there were no humans left to banish. Every single one had already gone. They had received the message, understood what it meant, and left without a word of complaint. They didn't wait to be told twice. Admiral Grace Perry stood on the bridge of her ship and watched the last human transport pass through the quarantine line. Behind her, the lights of Union space twinkled like cold stars. Ahead lay only darkness. All ships accounted for, her first officer reported. 7 million humans evacuated in 48 hours, no one left behind. Grace nodded slowly. Set course for Rally Point Alpha. It's time to begin the next phase. The ship turned away from the galaxy that had rejected them. Other vessels followed, thousands of them, forming a river of light that flowed toward the empty space between stars. Back on Prime, the Chancellor received reports of the human evacuation with growing unease. This was not normal behavior. Banished species fought the decision. They bargained and begged and made trouble. They didn't simply pack up and leave like they had been planning it all along. "Where are they going?" he demanded. His advisors had no answer. The human ships had passed beyond the range of Union sensors. They had vanished into the dark spaces that no species bothered to explore. They were gone. The Chancellor told himself this was a good thing. The human problem had solved itself. The galaxy could return to its peaceful ways. There would be no more uncomfortable questions, no more challenges to tradition, no more change. He almost believed it. On a cold asteroid far beyond the quarantine line, Daniel Carter stood before a crowd of human leaders. They had gathered in a rough chamber carved from stone, lit by portable lights and warmed by portable heaters. It was not comfortable. It was not beautiful, but it was theirs. "The galaxy has made its choice," Daniel said. "Now we make ours. We can spend our energy on anger and revenge. We can waste our years dreaming of the day we return in triumph, or we can do something else, something bigger." He looked at the faces around him. Scientists and soldiers, farmers and engineers, old and young. All of them had lost their homes today. All of them had been told they were not wanted. "They think they've gotten rid of us," Daniel continued. "They think we'll fade away in the dark, but they've forgotten something important. Humans don't fade, we adapt, we grow, we become something new." He pointed toward the distant stars that no one had ever explored. "Out there is everything we need. New worlds, new resources, new possibilities. The galaxy didn't want us. Fine, we'll build something better. And someday when they need us, when they come begging for our help, we'll show them what humanity became while they weren't watching." The crowd was silent for a long moment. Then someone began to clap. Others joined in. The sound grew until it filled the chamber, bouncing off the stone walls and echoing into the darkness. Humanity had been banished, but they were not defeated. They were just getting started. 50 years is a long time. Stars are born and die. Species rise and fall. Memories fade and are forgotten. For the Galactic Union, the humans became a story told to children. They were the aggressive ones, the dangerous ones, the ones who had to be sent away for the good of everyone. The quarantine zone around Sol remained dark and quiet. Union probes flew past its borders every few years and reported nothing. No signals, no ships, no signs of life. Most species assumed the humans had destroyed themselves, as violent species always did. A few wondered what had really happened, but they kept their questions to themselves. The galaxy moved on. Trade continued. Wars were fought and won. New species joined the Union and old ones faded away. Earth became a footnote in history books, a warning about what happens to species that grow too fast and dream too big. Nobody knew the truth. Admiral stood on the observation deck of the starship Defiance and looked out at something impossible. Before her stretched a fleet of 12,000 vessels, arranged in perfect formation across millions of kilometers of space. Behind them hung a sight that no alien had ever seen, a massive structure that circled a captured star, providing living space for 3 billion humans. This was Haven, the secret home of humanity. It floated in the void between galaxies, so far from Union space that their most powerful telescopes could never find it. For 50 years, humans had built and grown and evolved in the darkness, hidden from a galaxy that thought they were dead. Was 62 years old, born after the banishment. She had never seen Earth or any Union world. Her entire life had been spent in this hidden civilization, training for a day that might never come. She was one of the finest officers in the human fleet, and she still felt small when she looked at what her people had created. "Impressive, isn't it?" said a voice behind her. She turned to find Director Brooks walking toward her. He was old now, one of the few remaining leaders who remembered life before the banishment. His hair was white and his steps were slow, but his eyes were still sharp. "I never get tired of the view," admitted. "Did we really build all of this in 50 years?" Smiled. "Humans work fast when we're motivated, and nothing motivates quite like being told you're not wanted." He joined her at the window and looked out at the fleet. Each ship represented years of work, thousands of lives dedicated to a single purpose. They were not warships, not exactly. They were arcs, designed to carry humanity to places no one had ever gone. "Project Wanderer is almost ready," said. "The first wave of colony ships will launch next month. Andromeda awaits." Nodded slowly. For decades, humanity had debated its future. Some wanted to return to the galaxy and take revenge on those who had banished them. Others wanted to forget the past and build a new home among distant stars. In the end, they had chosen a third path. They would do both. The colony ships would carry millions of humans to the Andromeda galaxy, a journey of hundreds of years. There they would build a new civilization, free from the shadow of the Union. But the fleet would remain behind, watching and waiting, because someday knew the galaxy would need them again. "What about the others?" she asked. "The ones who want to go back?" Sighed. "They'll get their chance, but not yet. The galaxy isn't ready for us. They need to learn their lesson first." It seemed cruel thought, but then she remembered the stories her parents had told her, the humiliation of the trial, the cold words of the Chancellor, the way humans had been treated like animals, like a disease to be cured. Maybe the galaxy did need to learn what life was like without humanity. Deep in the research stations of Haven, scientists worked on technologies that would have seemed like magic to the Union. They had learned to fold space, to step between dimensions, to harvest energy from the hearts of dying stars. They had cured diseases that had plagued humanity for. They had extended human to centuries. They had become something new. Dr. Lisa Morgan was one of these scientists. She had spent her entire career studying the hollow, a mysterious phenomenon that existed in the spaces between galaxies. It was a kind of emptiness, a void that consumed everything it touched. Most humans thought it was just a natural feature of the universe, dangerous but distant. Lisa knew better. "It's moving," she told her team, pointing at the readings on her display. "Slowly but definitely moving, toward the galaxy." Her assistant frowned. "That's impossible. The hollow isn't alive. It can't move with purpose." "I didn't say it was alive," Lisa replied. "I said it was moving. Something is pushing it, or pulling it. Either way, it's going to reach Union space in about 50 years. She stared at the data, feeling a cold weight settle in her stomach. The galaxy that had banished humanity was about to face a threat unlike anything it had ever seen, and they had no idea it was coming. Lisa sent her findings to the Council, knowing what they would mean. The debate about humanity's future was about to get much more complicated. In his quarters aboard the Defiance, Admiral received the report with a heavy heart. She had always known this day might come. The galaxy would face a crisis, and humanity would have to choose whether to help or to watch from the shadows. She thought about her parents, who had died still hopping to see Earth again. She thought about the millions of humans who had built new lives in exile, who had learned to love their hidden home. She thought about the children being born every day, children who would inherit whatever decision the current generation made. The easy choice would be to do nothing. Let the Union face the hollow alone. Let them learn what it meant to stand without allies. Let them understand, finally, what they had lost when they banished humanity. But knew that wasn't really a choice at all. Humans didn't watch from the sidelines. They didn't let others suffer when they could help. That was who they were, even when it cost them everything. She called a meeting of her senior officers and began to plan. 50 years of silence was about to end. The galaxy had forgotten about humanity, but humanity had never forgotten about the galaxy. And when the darkness came, when the hollow threatened to consume everything, humans would be there. Not because they were asked, not because they were wanted, but because that was what humans did. They ran toward the fire while everyone else ran away. The Galactic Union was dying. Not quickly, like a ship exploding in battle, but slowly, like a tree rotting from within. Cracks had appeared in the Great Alliance, small at first, then growing wider with each passing year. Old friends became enemies. Trade routes became. The peace that had lasted for 10,000 years was crumbling to dust. Lieutenant Commander Sam watched it all from the shadows. He sat in a crowded bar on the space station nursing a drink he would never finish. To the aliens around him, he looked like a merchant, complete with blue skin and ridged forehead. The disguise had taken years of surgery and genetic modification to create. It was perfect in every way. But underneath, Sam was human, one of a handful who had stayed behind when the rest of humanity fled. His job was simple: watch, listen, and report. Tonight, the bar was full of worried voices. A merchant was complaining about pirates on the trade lanes. A soldier was talking about border conflicts with the collective. A scientist was whispering about strange readings from the outer rim, readings that no one could explain. Sam listened to all of it and felt a cold satisfaction. The galaxy was falling apart exactly as predicted. He finished his drink and walked back to his small apartment. Once inside, he activated a hidden communication device and sent his weekly report to the human fleet. The news was the same as always: more wars, more chaos, more fear. The reply came quickly: continue observation, maintain cover, the time is not yet right. Sam sighed and closed the device. He had been waiting for 15 years. Sometimes he wondered if the time would ever be right. Across the galaxy, the Chancellor was having similar thoughts. He stood in his private chamber, looking at reports that seemed to get worse every day. The hegemony had invaded 3 neutral worlds. The collective had released a plague that killed millions. The economic systems that had sustained the Union for centuries were collapsing. And then there was the hollow. The Chancellor stared at the images on his display. They showed a region of space that had once held 40 inhabited worlds. Now there was nothing. No planets, no stars, no debris, just empty darkness that seemed to swallow light itself. The hollow was growing. It had started on the outer rim, far from anything important. Most species had ignored it, assuming it was a natural phenomenon that would eventually stop. But it hadn't stopped. It had consumed world after world, system after system, spreading like a stain across the galaxy. And no one knew how to stop it. The Chancellor thought about the humans as he often did these days. He remembered the day of their banishment, the satisfaction he had felt as he read the verdict. They had been so annoying, those humans, always asking questions, always pushing boundaries, always making everyone uncomfortable. But they had also been useful. The Chancellor was beginning to understand just how useful. Before their banishment, humans had built many of the systems that kept the Union running. They had designed the trade networks, the communication protocols, the economic algorithms. They had solved problems that other species didn't even know existed, and when they left, they had taken all of that knowledge with them. The Chancellor had spent years trying to rebuild those systems. His scientists had failed. His engineers had failed. The human solutions had been elegant and simple, but no one could figure out how they worked. It was like trying to repair a machine without understanding its purpose. Now the Union was paying the price. On a research station orbiting a dying star, a young scientist named Aura was making a discovery that would change everything. She had spent her career studying the hollow, trying to understand what it was and where it came from. Most of her colleagues believed it was a natural phenomenon, like a black hole or a supernova. Aura wasn't so sure. She had found patterns in the hollow's movement. It didn't spread randomly. It targeted specific systems, specific worlds. It moved with purpose, like a predator hunting prey. And the more she studied it, the more she became convinced of something terrible. The hollow was alive. She shared her findings with the scientific council, expecting interest and support. Instead, she received only dismissal. The hollow couldn't be alive, they told her. It was impossible. She was young and foolish and wasting everyone's time. Aura didn't give up. She continued her research in secret, gathering evidence, building her case. And then one night, while analyzing old communication records, she found something that made her blood run cold. A message, buried in the static of deep space. A warning sent by human scientists just before the banishment, addressed to anyone who would listen. The hollow is coming. We know how to stop it, but we're out of time. If you're reading this, find us. Find us before it's too late. Aura stared at the message for a long time. Then she began to search for a way to contact the humans. Back on, Sam received an unusual communication. Someone was trying to reach humanity through an old emergency channel, one that hadn't been used in 50 years. The message was simple. I know you're out there. I have information. Please respond. Sam traced the signal to a research station. His first instinct was to ignore it. It could be a trap, a trick to find the hidden human fleet, but something about the message felt genuine. He contacted his superiors and waited for orders. The reply came faster than expected. Make contact, learn what she knows, but reveal nothing about our location. Sam smiled for the first time in years. After 15 years of watching and waiting, something was finally happening. The galaxy was falling apart, the hollow was growing, and a scientist had found a 50-year-old message in a bottle. Maybe the time was finally becoming right. He began to plan his journey to the research station, not knowing that this meeting would change the fate of two civilizations. The collapse of the Union had created an opportunity. The question was whether anyone would be brave enough to take it. In the darkness between galaxies, the human fleet waited. They had been patient for 50 years. They could be patient a little longer, but not much longer. The galaxy had made its choice when it banished humanity. Now humanity would make its choice about the galaxy. The distress call came on a cold morning, received by a listening post on the edge of human space. It was weak and broken, traveling across distances that should have made communication impossible. But the message was clear enough. This is the coalition of free worlds. We are dying. The hollow has taken everything. If anyone can hear this, please help, please. Commander Ben Torres played the message 3 times in his small office. The coalition of free worlds was made of species that had voted against humanity's banishment 50 years ago. They had tried to speak up, tried to argue for mercy, and they had been ignored. Now they were the last ones standing against a threat that no one understood. Ben sent the message to Admiral and waited. The response came within hours. A council meeting was called, the largest in decades. Every major human leader gathered to decide the fate of the galaxy that had rejected them. The debate was fierce. General Chris Dalton spoke first, his voice hard with old anger. They banished us. They called us dangerous. They said the galaxy would be better without humans. Let them face the consequences of their choice. Many in the room nodded. The memory of the banishment still burned, passed down through generations like a scar that wouldn't heal. Why should humanity risk itself for species that had treated them like animals? Dr. Foster stood to respond. She was old now, one of the few who remembered the days before exile. Her voice was soft but steady. I understand the anger, she said. I feel it too. But I didn't spend 50 years building this civilization just to become what they feared we were. We're better than revenge. We have to be." The room fell silent. Director Brooks, now ancient and frail, spoke from his wheelchair. "The question isn't whether they deserve our help. The question is what kind of people we want to be. Do we want to be the species that watches while billions die? Do we want to prove the right about us?" The debate continued for hours. Stories were shared, arguments were made, tears were shed. In the end, a vote was called. The result was not unanimous, but it was clear. Humanity would return to the galaxy, not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as who they had always been, the species that helped because it was right, not because it was earned. Commander Ben Torres was given the mission of leading the first reconnaissance team. His ship, the Swift Current, was small and fast, designed for exploration rather than combat. He took a crew of 12 and set course for Union space. What they found was worse than anyone had imagined. The first system they visited was empty. Not destroyed, not damaged, just empty. Planets hung in their orbits with no signs of life. Ships drifted without power. Cities stood silent and dark. The hollow had passed through and left nothing behind. Ben walked through the ruins of a colony, his boots crunching on dust that might have been buildings or people. The silence was overwhelming. No birds, no wind, no voices, just emptiness. "How many did this system hold?" asked his first officer, Lieutenant Amy Grant. Ben checked his records. 40 million, all gone. They visited 12 more systems. The story was the same everywhere. The hollow was moving through the galaxy like a wave of nothing, erasing everything in its path, and the species that remained were too busy fighting each other to mount any real defense. On a refugee station near the border of Coalition space, Ben made contact with survivors. They were thin and frightened, crowded into ships that were never meant to hold so many. They looked at the human uniforms with confusion and fear. "You're humans," said an old woman, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought you were all dead." "Not dead," Ben replied, "just away." "Why did you come back?" Ben thought about the question for a long moment. Why had they come back? For revenge, for glory, for the chance to say they had been right all along. "Because you needed help," he finally said, "and we were able to give it." The woman stared at him like he was speaking a language she didn't understand. In her experience, no one helped anyone without expecting something in return. The concept of free aid was foreign to her. Ben sent his report to the fleet. The situation was desperate. The coalition was nearly destroyed. The other major powers were weakened and scattered. The hollow was growing faster than anyone had predicted. But there was hope. Human scientists, working with the information Aura had gathered, believed they understood the hollow now. It wasn't just a natural phenomenon. It was a weapon, created by an ancient species that had died long before any current civilization existed. It could be stopped, but it would take everything humanity had built in 50 years of exile. Admiral read the report and made her decision. She called the fleet to action. 12,000 ships began the journey home. On the bridge of the Defiance, watched the stars blur as her ship entered faster than light travel. Around her, the crew worked with quiet efficiency. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. "What do you think we'll find?" asked her first officer, Commander Jack. Thought about the refugees Ben had described, the empty worlds, the frightened survivors, a galaxy that had banished humanity and then collapsed without them. "I think we'll find a lot of broken pieces," she said, "and I think we'll spend a long time putting them back together. And if they don't want our help, if they tell us to leave again." Smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Then we'll help anyway, because that's what we do, that's what makes us human." The fleet traveled through the darkness between galaxies, a river of light flowing toward a civilization in ruins. Behind them, Haven continued its orbit around a captured star, a monument to what humanity had become in exile. Ahead lay the galaxy, broken, dying, afraid. But not alone, not anymore. Humanity was coming home. The final battle took place in the system, the same world where humanity had been banished 100 years before. It seemed fitting somehow. The crystal halls of the Galactic Assembly had been destroyed in the fighting. The great chamber where the verdict was read now lay in ruins, its beautiful pillars shattered across a field of ash. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Defiance and looked at the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Human ships formed the core, 12,000 vessels carrying weapons and technologies that no alien had ever seen. Around them gathered the remnants of the Coalition, the survivors of the Union, even a few warships that had swallowed their pride to fight beside former enemies. Against them stood the Hollow. It was visible now, a wall of darkness that stretched across the sky. Stars disappeared when they touched it. Light bent and twisted at its edges. It was not just emptiness. It was the absence of everything, a wound in reality that consumed all it touched. "All ships report ready," announced Commander Jack. "The weapon is charged." Nodded. Human scientists had spent months developing a way to stop the Hollow. It wasn't a bomb or a beam. It was a seed, a fragment of compressed reality that would fill the emptiness and heal the wound. But someone had to deliver it to the heart of the Hollow, and no one knew if they would survive. "I'll take a volunteer crew," said Captain Tyler, stepping forward. His ship, the Morning Star, was the fastest in the fleet. "We can punch through the outer barrier and plant the seed before the Hollow reacts." Looked at the young captain. He was 32 years old, born in exile, trained for a war he never expected to fight. He knew what he was volunteering for. They all did. "Are you sure?" she asked quietly. Tyler smiled. "I've spent my whole life preparing for a moment that matters. This matters." The battle began with a roar of engines and a flash of weapons fire. Human ships moved in ways that physics, folding space to appear behind enemy lines, phasing through solid objects, striking from directions that shouldn't exist. The Hollow fought back with tendrils of darkness that reached out to consume anything they touched. Ships died, brave crews vanished into nothing, but still the fleet pressed forward, clearing a path for the Morning Star. In the chaos of battle, something unexpected happened. A cruiser took a hit meant for a human transport. Its shields failed, its engines died, and it began to drift toward the Hollow's edge. Without hesitation, Tyler changed course. He brought the Morning Star alongside the crippled cruiser and extended emergency docking clamps. His own shield strained under the assault, but he held position. "What are you doing?" demanded the captain over the communication channel. "Your mission is more important than our lives." "Maybe," Tyler replied, "but I'm not the kind of person who leaves anyone behind. Hold tight." He pulled the ship to safety before turning back toward the Hollow. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human medics boarded damaged alien vessels to treat the wounded. Human engineers worked alongside technicians to repair failing systems. Human soldiers gave their lives to protect species that had once called them monsters. The aliens watched in confusion. This wasn't how enemies behaved. This wasn't how anyone behaved. What kind of species risked itself for those who had wronged it? The answer was simple: humans. The Morning Star reached the edge of the Hollow. Tyler looked at his crew, 12 people who had volunteered for a mission that might be their last. "It's been an honor," he said simply. They plunged into the darkness. For a moment nothing happened. The battle continued. Ships fought and died. The Hollow kept advancing. Then, at the very heart of the emptiness, a light appeared. It started small, a single point of brightness in an ocean of nothing. Then it grew, spreading outward like ripples in a pond. The darkness began to pull back, retreating from the expanding light. Stars reappeared. Space healed itself. A cheer rose from the human fleet, then from the alien ships. The Hollow was shrinking, collapsing in on itself, dying. And then, impossibly, the morning star emerged from the fading darkness. Damaged but intact, Tyler and his crew had survived. The victory celebration lasted for days. On the ruins of Prime, humans and aliens gathered together for the first time in a century. There were no walls between them, no barriers, just survivors, grateful to be alive. The High Chancellor, successor to the one who had banished humanity, approached Daniel Carter. The old ambassador was ancient now, carried in a chair by young attendants, but his mind was still sharp. "On behalf of the Galactic Union," the Chancellor said formally, "I offer our deepest apologies for the injustice done to your people. We were wrong, we were afraid, and we nearly destroyed ourselves because of it." Daniel listened to the words with a calm expression. "We would like to invite humanity to rejoin the Union," the Chancellor continued. "This time as full and equal partners. Your technology, your wisdom, your courage have saved us all. Please come home." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Around him, human leaders waited. Alien delegates held their breath. The future of two civilizations hung on his answer. "We don't need your union," Daniel said finally. His voice was soft but clear. "We've built something new, something better. We don't need your approval or your acceptance." The Chancellor's face fell. "But," Daniel continued, "we'll be your neighbors. We'll trade with you, learn from you, help you rebuild. And when the next threat comes, because there's always a next threat, we'll be there." He leaned forward, his old eyes bright with something that might have been forgiveness. "Not because you asked, not because you deserve it, but because that's who we are, that's who we've always been." In the years that followed, humanity spread across the galaxy once more. They built new colonies beside alien worlds. They shared their technology freely. They helped rebuild civilizations that had crumbled during the dark years. They never forgot the banishment, but they didn't let it define them. The galaxy learned a lesson written in sacrifice. You don't exile humanity. You don't push them into the darkness and expect them to fade away. You simply give them room to become something extraordinary. And when they come back stronger. They come back human,